studying a passage to Africa and desperate to get full marks for question 4? Let me show you how. Stay tuned. Yes, you're watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
Abbiamo il cuore a strisce, portaci dove vuoi.
So this question is out of 12. You need to show a perceptive understanding of the effects of language and structure and be reasonably technical in your analysis. Try to use some subject terminology for every quotation that you explore. There are 12 marks for this question, so try to analyse 12 quotations split into 4 different paragraphs. However, make sure that you're sharply focused on the question and don't just regurgitate generic analysis from your own annotations. Subject terminology is very important with this exam board. Make sure that your analysis is as technical as possible. My assumption is that you already know the text reasonably well. Can you therefore match up some of these trickier words with their meanings? What a useful revision exercise. Press pause now. And here are the answers, deliciously colour-coded. Press pause to check and consolidate. So in this video, we're going to explore this question. How does the writer use language and structure to show his reactions to the people he encounters in Somalia? Jot this down and consider the text in light of this question as it appears on screen at 5-second intervals. You may like to add additional annotations to your own copy of the text, choosing quotations particularly pertinent to this question. You of course have your own fabulous annotations. Nonetheless, you might find it helpful to look at my annotations, which are about to show on screen within 5-second intervals. Press pause on each one and possibly add to your own copies of the text. Time now to write your own question 4, which you'll then be able to compare with mine. How does the writer use language and structure to show his reactions to the people he encounters in Somalia? Remember, 4 chunky paragraphs, each exploring 3 quotations. No intro, no conclusion. Off you go. Press pause now.
How did you get on? Time to compare your response with my 12 out of 12 cracker.
At the beginning of the passage, the writer responds with both compassion and a degree of professional journalistic detachment to the people he encounters in Somalia. He references 1,000 hungry, lean, scared and betrayed faces during his travels across the country. These 4 emotive adjectives show the writer's empathy for ordinary Somalians, whom he recognises as starving, frightened and feeling let down. However, the writer recognises his own awkward position as a well-fed Westerner observing terrible suffering when he refers to the ghoulish manner of journalists. This particular adjective confirms that the writer accepts journalistic methods can be seen as ruthlessly unpleasant and morbid. However, this is something he has to accept, as he feels shocking pictures of the starving can result in a larger external audience and therefore a wider understanding and therefore support for Somalian suffering. He develops the idea of ghoulishness when he suggests that hunting down the shocking is like the craving for a drug. This simile implies that the writer, and journalists in general, become addicted to finding increasingly disturbing stories and images. Whilst on a personal level such addiction is unhealthy and unnatural, it does implicitly show the writer's desire to help the Somalians as much as possible through publicity. In the middle section of the text, the writer makes reference to a child dying of starvation. She writes, Habiba had died. This simple sentence starkly reveals the reality of life for the people of Somalia. Premature death is commonplace and everyday, hence the absence of any additional contextualizing phrases. The subsequent sentence begins, no rage, no whimpering, just a passing away. This tricolon within a grammatically incomplete sentence emphasizes the heart-wrenchingly passive silence and accepting nature of Habiba's death, something the writer feels implicitly is deeply disturbing. Notably, the writer suggests that before her death, she was living a half-life. This hyphenated noun confirms the writer's view that Somalians are not truly able to live fulfilling lives due to the scarcity of food. They can only faintly and unhappily experience a glimpse of what human life should be able to offer. The writer also suggests that he was instinctively repulsed by the physical suffering of the Somalians, something he feels uncomfortable about. He describes his reactions as a mixture of pity and revulsion. Yes, revulsion. The abstract nouns confirm his mixed feelings. He feels both sorry for the Somalians, but also a sharp pang of disgust at their physical deterioration, something shockingly emphasised within the grammatically incomplete short sentence for effect. He draws explicit attention to the fact that this observation is socially unacceptable in his use of the word taboo. This noun implies that the writer feels compelled to tell harsh truths about the starving Somalians in this article. He wants to break through Western complacency in order to force them to fully understand the extent of their suffering. He goes into graphic detail about how appalling it is to experience this suffering firsthand. To be in a feeding centre is to hear and smell excretion. The use of the senses broadens the reader's understanding of the disgusting smell within aid centres, whilst the use of anaphora, to be in a feeding centre, is the opening to the subsequent sentence as well, has a claustrophobic effect and confirms how the writer feels traumatised both by what he witnesses and the putrid atmosphere. In the final part of the passage, the writer struggles to interpret a man's smile amid so much suffering. He knows that it cannot signify happiness and asks mid-sentence within dashes, how could it be? This rhetorical question forces the reader to agree with his conclusion that it is impossible for these Somalians to experience joy. The writer clearly feels that this smile is important to his story in a way that he is initially unable to explain. It touched me, it moved me. The use of parallelism suggests that the writer is struggling to fully understand and define his complex response to the unknown person's smile. However, the closing stages of the passage show the writer recognising that the smile represented embarrassment and apology. He is forced to ask himself, how should I feel to be standing there so strong and confident? This rhetorical question implicitly encourages the reader to reflect on their comparatively ridiculously privileged state. We in the West may need to reassess our attitude towards the less fortunate and take on some responsibility for those struggling so bravely and helplessly to maintain something approaching dignity. Why is this the full 12 out of 12? Well, note the level of immediate detail in relation to the question within my topic sentence. Show the examiner you've really got the passage and the question as quickly as possible. Keep the quotations as short as possible, as specified in the instructions. Remember to use subject terminology post each quotation. Here, emotive adjectives, adjective and simile. Ensure that your analysis post-quotation isn't overly general. I'm very specific here when I point out the phrase confirms the writer's belief that ordinary Somalians are starving, frightened and feeling let down. Remember that you're not just exploring the effects of language but structure too, as seen here when I explored the effect of the simple sentence Habiba had died. This has been Schofield on Shakespeare, helping you with A Passage to Africa. Many thanks for watching and cheers.